So welcome to the Cambridge Creative Writing Centre series of conversations with writers. And today I am joined by Dr. Adnan Mahmutović, who is a writer and lecturer based in Stockholm. Adnan and I met 6 years ago now, is it 6 years? At a conference in Vienna, and we've become writing partners since then, working on a lot of collaborative projects. Adnan is an extraordinary writer of short and long prose. You don't do poetry yet though, do you? I feel. I don't think I've seen any poetry from you.
No, I'm a closeted poet, so I'm not getting out yet. No.
Well, I'll keep working on you on that front. And you and I are currently working on a project that's going to turn you into a comic book hero. We've got a graphic novel in the pipeline together.
Yes, I'm much looking forward to that.
That's a really exciting thing that's happening.
And I can do that basically, so because I will accomplish my dreams. So
your dreams.
Yeah, my dream.
Your dreams.
Yes.
Adnan's also you're associate professor at Stockholm University and fiction editor for 2/3 North, which is a fantastic journal for anyone who's looking to submit or read some new work in progress. And your latest novel, At the Feet of Mothers, was just published earlier this year by Cinnamon Press. And that's what we're going to have a little chat about today, mostly. So the first question really has got to be, what is it like bringing a novel into the world at a time of global pandemic? It feels like a sort of inevitable question that we just can't really escape. But how has it been?
Obviously, it's been tough. I mean, we haven't been able to do much, live promotion, like tours and things like that. I was slated to come down to Falmouth and some other places, to Cambridge as well. You invited me, so I always love these live meetings with people and doing this on Zoom and other platforms. It's been okay, obviously, but not as I'm used to. And as a teacher, I mainly love being in class and spending time with people and not so much online. But we're managing. I think it's fine.
Brilliant. And one of the sad things about that is I don't have my copy yet. Mm-hmm. I don't have my copy yet to be able to sort of hold it up. So if you wouldn't mind showing us the cover of At the Feet of Mothers. I feel pretty lucky because I've seen this in manuscript form many times, but I haven't seen the finished product, which is frustrating. I can't wait to actually read it. Tell us a little bit about the story itself.
So the story follows a character named Joseph Schneider. Where basically it's a story of how he was adopted in the 80s in Palestine. His mother is American, named Rachel, and his father is called Benjamin. He is an American Jew. So from this place up on a mountain in North Carolina, this woman goes to Gaza to help refugees, and then she finds this little kid which she adopts. He grows up believing he is actually Jewish Cherokee, very much a boy of his woods, and he later on. His mother demands that he actually goes and find his biological mother, which he hates. He really hates being burdened by that double heritage. Like suddenly, why are you doing this to me? But then, to honor his mother, that wish, he does embark on that journey to Palestine and trying to find that woman. So the story involves a lot of border crossing, a lot of engagement with parents, children, emotions, history, nationality, and all those things that are kind of haunting our world today.
I was going to say, I mean, when I first read a manuscript version of this, it was these were big questions that were haunting us, and it feels like even more so today. These questions of our sort of shifting borders and identities that we're sort of struggling to make sense of seem even more intense today somehow. Did you have to do a lot of research for this, because it's quite different as a topic from your previous fiction, which had focused very much on your own heritage, Bosnia, and being a refugee and the experience of the war in the Balkans? That's your short fiction, your sad stories, funny stories about sad refugees, sad stories about funny refugees, both.
Okay.
Yes. That seemed to be very much the sort of the territory you're exploring, and this is a jump in some ways, but I think some of the themes stay the same. So how did you move into this new space?
Well, the result of this move, really, this came out of a sense of intimacy that we accomplish through stories, the ways we connect through stories. So you and I connected over stories. We found things that were so different, but also the same. And we were able to write together, although our styles are entirely different, and where we come from, our histories are different, but there were huge kind of the intimacy was really quite great, and my first story was published in North Carolina, or in the US, but by an editor from North Carolina, from this particular place, and I was always amazed by the fact that someone, on the other side of the globe could feel what I feel through my story. So that made me realize that, okay, well, I can put a story there. I want to do this. I want to take this risk. I want to do the research, but I know at core, all that is technicalities, because the story really, if you have the right story, it doesn't matter where you place it. The place is going to affect it. That's something I've been talking about in my, in my lectures as well, and in my other work. That for me is really essential. But the core story, the raw material, the raw intimacy which I'm reaching for is really that which is like in dialogue with these places. So it's not that I had to do a lot more research than I did for Bosnia, even though I do come from that history, even though I have a lot more knowledge just by virtue of having grown up in that place. But at the same time, we forget things. We need to do research. We need to check things. And so, yeah, I did quite a lot of research for this book, mainly in terms of getting it right in terms of geography and the language, because I have not done American language, especially this kind, before. So that was one of the biggest challenges, perhaps. Research.
It's emotional truths, isn't it? I think you're right. It's I always remember being told, it's something that stayed with me a long time, that all the writer has to do is tell the story of the human heart, and in the end, our hearts, wherever they sort of find themselves, they all want the same things. We all have the same sort of yearnings and desires, don't we? And that sort of a transcends a lot of those borders in some ways. I should maybe say that at this point, because you referenced our own connection over stories, that the piece of work that we wrote together, the sort of that we're now turning into a graphic novel, is very much about that idea of preserving stories, isn't it? And it was a story that told Adnan's experience of hiding his comic books during the wars in the 90s in Bosnia, and for me, a very foolish attempt to try and find those comics and replace them, which led me into exploring my own connections with that region. My father was in the Air Force, and he was based there. And I think that's something that we discovered together, wasn't it? That sort of that power of storytelling to make sense of a very complicated and otherwise nonsensical world. And do you think that's even more something that, as writers, that we've got a bit of a responsibility right now? We've got a world that's just in constant flux. Every day seems like another crazy script has just been sort of dumped on the desk of whoever's orchestrating life. And is that what we can do as writers right now, do you think? Use stories to make sense of things?
Well, I think it's always been the case. So it's not different now, although we feel it more intensely because it's global and because it's probably not even worse or more intense than it used to be for me in the 90s. Yeah, no, but it's just that the sense that we are a part of a globe rather than just a small place. And for me, just making sense of that leap is actually what makes these kinds of stories really important to understand these kinds of connections. So in this story, I guess I was feeling it from the beginning when I started writing that. This what if, someone who is so rooted to a very small place, just a cottage in a forest on the top of a mountain, and he doesn't care about anything else, suddenly discovers that he has a connection to the other side of the world and has to take that into account. We may hate it just the way he hates it, and he wants to resist it. But it's always going to be this search for a balance between where we want to be, where we feel most comfortable, and that world that is pulling us out in these dangerous paths and so on.
And because it's being rooted to a narrative of ourselves as well as a place, isn't it? It's that story we've told ourselves about who we are, and then finding out that maybe that's not the case at all, and that we're somebody completely different in whatever context that might be. So maybe it'd be nice to hear a little bit from the book, if you wouldn't mind reading a little extract for us, whet our appetites.
So I'll read you a little bit from the beginning, but I will later on mention a couple of other things. Really just the opening, so you get a little bit of a sense of the character and the hook.
Take it away.
Let's hope you'll get hooked. So the opening on At the Feet of Mothers is called Tourists Are Coming, and this is from June 1997. Tourists are going to be a major theme in the book, also something Joseph hates. He hates a lot of things. Yeah.
Remind me of anyone.
Why not? Yes. Tourists are coming. You're a cute little Cherokee, the tourist lady said and pinched my cheek. I love the eye patch. Can I take a picture? Fucking tourists. They just had to ask it. Every time. A picture of a real Indian boy. Should I say I'm a fake? Not sure they'd care. I looked like an Indian, and that was plenty. She was fat, this one, I remember, and she'd just come out of Joy's pancake. They all come to Maggie Valley to eat pancakes. And what else? See the reservation? Watch clogging? Take the kids to Ghost Town in the Sky? Take deep breaths in our woods? Now, this one was here for the golden pancakes, and silver dollar and pecan, and chocolate chip and sweet potato. And she must have had strawberry roll-up. Or maybe not. Maybe they didn't exist back when I was 12. I should have listened to my mother and not come down to Maggie during the tourist season. I really should have stayed in the woods and survived the flood like Noah and his kin by staying on the top. It was always too damn hot in the valley anyway. But I was there, and one thing was true. We mountain people were not rude. And we smiled at tourists even when we imagined coons nagging at their bone. At least my family did. The rest of the valley were just genuine tourist-loving bastards, I suppose. Yeah, they damn well were. So I smiled. Yes, I used to do that back then, a lot. And I said to her, where do you want me to stand? I think that's enough of a sample.
That's a strong opening. I mean, that's changed a lot actually. Also, as an opening from
Yeah.
the version that I read years ago.
Yes.
Tell me something about that process of turning an idea into an actual fully fledged novel that's going to, be released out there into the world. How does it go through those phases? How do you know when it's done?
It's very hard to know when it's done, actually, because there's always more to do. There's always more digging, and it is a little bit like just releasing a kid into the world. You have to say at some time, I'm no longer just a parent. I need to be something else. So we developed this kind of relationship with our stories like they were our kids. And we need to release them at some point and let them be what they are. So I mainly, struggled a lot to get it in shape in terms of the plot, because I don't usually work with the plot. So that was one of the things that took me a while to get right, and to get a good balance, good flow to this journey. Took me quite a few years because I was not always working on it, and even if I did, I don't think I would have finished it sooner, because that's you have to have a couple of years to just process things and to mature and to get smarter, to get wiser. So you always grow quite a lot.
And in a strange way, it's almost like now is a really somehow sort of just the right moment for it, because I think some of those questions they've just bubbled right up to the surface. Just hearing you reading there with the sort of the idea of the divide between tourists sort of flocking into our towns and the sort of the safety and security of the mountain retreats. I think that those are things that we're so painfully aware of now, aren't they? That we don't want people. We can maybe fly around the world again a little bit or travel. There's a sort of a nervousness about letting people back into our communities because of the pandemic that we're in. So although it's sort of it's set you apart in terms of your ability to go out there with the book and take it on tour, but it's also an oddly pertinent time for it to be there as well.
It is, because there's two things. One thing that's happened is obviously that we want the tourists to come back.
Yes.
There's this paradox in us that just as in this small place, they don't have a lot to live off, so they need these tourists, but they also hate them. And I think that's something we all do. We hate the idea of the tourists, but we also want the tourists to come to us.
And we want to be a tourist.
we want to be tourists. So and in fact, Joseph becomes a sort of a tourist. So this love and hate relationship to ourselves. We want to be authentic, we want to be genuine, and we feel that being a tourist is really inauthentic. It's really faking it. Yes, and being the object of tourism, like you want to be exciting as a writer as well. A story wants to be exciting, and you want to be attractive to people, but at the same time, you don't want to be exoticized. So these are the kind of paradoxes of what we want to be and who we are.
And it's a question I think that's coming up again and again for writers about the stories that we can tell and the way that we tell these stories, and that question of exoticizing or sort of othering stories, which it's a sort of it feels like we're very aware of it, I think, as writers. Where do you feel you stand on that at the moment?
Well, I think we need to always go back to the basics. Where does writing come from?
Mm.
And at every point in our writing, or at some point in our writing, when we do a lot of research, we'll do this and that, we write, and I think it's necessary, important for ourselves to ask, where does this come from originally? It was the same for me when I finished my PhD, after, 4 years of work. I had to ask myself, well, why did I start this in the first place? This weird thing, how did it come about? Where did it come from? Why is this still important to me? And to answer that question in that final draft before I guess that's a way of telling, when it's done, when you can actually read your own work and say, okay, now I'm actually answering that.
Yeah.
So what? Or myself.
Yeah.
Mm.
And maybe it's a spoiler to ask, but does Joseph come to answer that so what, that what if question that he spends much of the novel trying to reconcile? Is it about reconciling, or is it about having to in the end live with things that don't necessarily sit together comfortably, but we have to sort of make the best of it?
I think it's the second, because it wouldn't be a good piece of writing if it really wanted to answer the questions explicitly, without leaving many of them open to the readers and to yourself as well. Because the moment you answer all the questions and say, this is the answer, you may just as well die. So
nothing left to live for if we've answered everything.
Yeah, because that's the whole point. And so he does answer some questions in ways that they open new venues, new paths, lead them to different things, new kinds of understanding of his relationship, for instance, with his mothers, with his family, with other people, who they are, and so on. Just to give an example, for this book could have been, I guess maybe it is political, but it deals with America, it deals with Palestine, Israel, all those things. But it's not responsible for giving solutions and answering those questions which we face in contemporary politics and history, but seeing what brews underneath, how do we actually move through this world? What you asked me earlier about responsibility, I think there is a responsibility to tackle things, to approach questions and answers, to deal with them. I think a novel is a response and responsibility, but not to give one fixed answer in the end, a political stance.
Do you think that your experience writing short stories has informed that in any way? Because the short story is very much a form that doesn't give up its answers easily. In fact, it sort of tends to withhold them quite tightly. And I know because your novel was the first long form thing that you published, wasn't it, rather than the short stories? But so you're one of these enviable people who can just move in between forms, which I'm very jealous of that. But do you think there's something about that sort of familiarity with the short form that sort of helps when it comes to these questions that we can't quite offer a firm response to?
I think you're quite right. In fact, I was trying to look at every chapter as a short story.
Right.
Not entirely, because that would kill the flow, really. And there are novels which are kind of series of short stories, but I wanted to strike some kind of balance between looking at each chapter as a standalone and and a part of a bigger picture of a flow. So I don't know how successful I was in doing that, but that was at least something I was thinking of, and what you described is pretty much describes it. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for people, wouldn't know who they would be, who struggle to move from short to long? Is there a sort of a technique? Is there something that we could take away that you might be able to guide us in that?
I think I'm more drawn to shorter scope of stories. I think we all have some kind of a clock or some kind of a instinct, where the story ends, how big it is in scope. And to give you an example, with my first novel, I wanted to write a huge novel. I wanted to write, the Bosnian Midnight Children, 600, 1,000 pages, encompassing it all. And I ended up with a novella. Because it just didn't seem right to write 1,000-page novel. It didn't click with the history. It didn't fit me as a character. And if you a novel is not a blown up short story. It's not just like, okay, this is a story. Let me just put
Keep
more
writing.
of everything. Yeah, it's not the more is the merrier. Some people have a better sense of writing really, really long pieces, but I really don't have a good piece of advice for how to do it.
I'm not sure if I'm reassured or worried.
Yeah.
I guess it's just keep
I think
writing.
also, I was also affected while I was writing it by all the essays that I was doing and that we were doing as well. I think just writing these personal essays, these creative nonfiction. That also affected the style and the form.
So perhaps it's a case of not having just the one project on the go when you're working long form, and it is consuming, isn't it? Yes. Maybe having these sort of side projects or other things other forms that start to sort of make you think differently or write differently. Having them on the go helps.
Yes, absolutely, it does.
Should we hear just a tiny bit more of the book, and then I could talk to you for hours about this, but I'm not sure Zoom will let me. But let's just hear a little bit more from the book.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think it will be. Do you want to hear from the ending? I mean, you talked about the spoilers.
Yeah, it's all something that doesn't give everything away.
Something that doesn't give everything away. I will. Okay. This is what I'm going to read. This is a chapter called "Just Add Words," and it's sort of kind of in the middle of the book, where this is interesting in terms of storytelling. And here is a scene where Joseph gets the letters that his biological mother used to send to Rachel, his American mother. So he discovers that they have had a correspondence of sorts. So this is just after he's found out he's got these letters, so he's going through them and so on. So just add words. This is what I thought of my two mothers when I sat on the floor of my father's workshop while Mom pulled a pack of letters from behind some books and gave them to me. Nothing. My thoughts left me like a bunch of cowards, and my body wobbled in the draft. I turned to Mom. I don't get it. Do you have a stash of these kinds of things you'll dole out on all my future birthdays? No. The letters smelled of some perfume that must have been strong once. Mom sat next to me and Dad watched us from the door until I opened the first letter. Then he left. I went through each of the 16 letters, sometimes twice. I made 3 different piles, then looked at them and then pulled 2 letters from one of the heaps and stacked them with another bunch. There was no method in that woman's madness. That Aliyah, the Palestinian. There was only one letter that was not a bunch of fragments. Beautiful handwriting. I put that letter at the bottom, like the rock on which I could put the rest of mad notes, obviously written at different times with different pens and pencils, some with old and random stains that didn't smell of anything. Some had words in Arabic, like she'd put them there as placeholders until she could find the American word. And in some places, she did cross the Arabic and put something that only remotely made sense in that sentence. I kept changing my mind about the arrangement of the letters until there were only 3 letters in one separate pile, and then I said to Mom, there are missing words in there. Yes, all verbs are gone. Well, just add them yourself. But how will I know which are the right ones? You won't. So he found a letter where his biological mother obviously, for some reason, removed all the verbs, all the actions, all that, just left the rest. And he needs to, so what he does later on is he makes all these different drafts, trying to fill in the missing words, trying to recreate the meaning, and a number of verbs could fit or also not fit in many different combinations. So it becomes like a small project of trying to find out what the story is in that mysterious letter.
Which in a way is a really beautiful metaphor for what we do as writers. We're always trying to find out what the story is and what the right words are, and we don't know if they're the right ones until
we don't.
Even when they're down there on the paper, well, we don't know. Like you said before, it's we let the thing go. It goes out into the world. It's not ours anymore. And I think that's a really lovely way to think of this strange alchemy that is this thing we do when we write. It's beautiful. Well, are there going to be any more readings or events that we can connect into to do with At the Feet of Mothers? Is there sort of any more online touring going on?
So I don't know if there will be any live readings organized just yet. Probably something in the autumn at some point. I mean, now it's the summer and the COVID has also made a mess of everything. So we'll see what we'll plan. I will have some kind of a blog tour. I think 10 bloggers are going to release something once a week, starting sometime in September. So we'll see what happens there. But if you, I have also done some recordings, some readings. So if you go to my official Facebook page, there I have tried to record readings of some of the passages and talk a little bit about the book and so on. So and there's also some old work that we have done, and some more readings. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in finding out more about this book and hear me read, if you think, I'm an awful reader, especially I cannot do the American accent, I want to try, but this accent I cannot do, and
I might have to go and have a look just to see the attempt.
Yes, yeah. So but I think you'll be able to understand what I say. So
that's Adnan Mahmutović, official author, Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. And just one last question, really. I guess how is your writing in the time of Corona? Are you writing something new now? Is there words still flowing?
They are actually quite a bit. Obviously, there's always the academic work which we have to do, but I have. I've been mainly working on this new thing which I have not done before, not that much. These kinds of articles which are semi-academic, semi-personal, semi-everything. And it started with my piece on Peter Handke in the autumn, but now I've written actually one on COVID-19 and jokes.
Yes, that's fantastic
yeah,
article.
so look that up. I've just written one on racism, which should come out soon, called Black Moses Matters. And there's another piece again, which I've co-written on language and history and so on, but more kind of personal stuff, lighter, with some research. Yeah, no, so something to bridge these gaps between the academia and people who just love to read.
Excellent. Well, we will put links to all of the all of the sort of those things that you've mentioned, and you have a habit of choosing titles for your texts that are almost impossible to remember. So we have Thinner Than a Hair, the novel. We have How to Fare Well and Stay Fair. Yes. Yeah. Short story collection we have At the Feet of Mothers. Maybe a really short title next time for those of us with aging memories. And all of the other articles.
The comics piece was How to Save Comics in Times of War.
Yes.
Yeah, so quite long, yeah.
Quite long, and I can remember that one though. So we'll put links to all of those things for anyone who wants to follow those up and to buy the book and to follow the progress. And just thank you ever so much for coming to talk to us. And everything we've mentioned will be in a link below the video. So hopefully we'll be able to have you back to Cambridge when such times allow, and we can hear more from the book and see how it's getting on, and hear more from these other articles. I think I feel like in a way that's it's like that's where our writing brains can move, isn't it, into these sort of colliding places where there's something of ourselves, these personal essays, and something of having to really look at the challenges of the world right now. So it's tough work, but needs to be done, doesn't it? So
thank you so much for hosting me. It was really a great pleasure.
Lovely to talk to you, and I hope it's in person next time. So take care.
Take care.
And we will speak again soon.